I got this book there today, United Gasoline and Kerosene Engines for a Type A repair list, and laid that in. It's got some pictures in it, some writing. That's just to go along with the advice that I give to anyone, if it matters, is if you own an engine, you should have the book for it. That's all I'm going to say about that. No matter how much you know, you should have a book for that engine. And I laid in these piston rings. That's them cast iron, you know, everybody's selling them. Takes 4, I think. But we'll get them put into that engine, you know. I mean, if the engine don't start, it's time to work on it. And I also got this. This was the culprit. This was the problem right here the whole amount of time, or is. You know, I've not started the engine as yet, awaiting this spring. So we'll shove that up on that igniter there in the morning, and put these rings in there. I think. I don't know where my flex hone's at, man. Anyways, we're going to somehow handle that and get this on there, and we'll give it another go. A little after 4 in the evening here in Middle Tennessee. Time to get the show started. What we have here is that this is igniter off of that United engine, made by Associated. They were on the internet. I could find nothing about a United igniter, an Associated igniter, especially this model. There was some different models, but this exact one. And so if you've got this one, this is kind of what you're going to be dealing with, and I think we're going to have success. And I'll tell you what the problem was. Right here's the problem. It's on that United that I was playing with the other day. So the problem was, I'll show you. This end of this spring right here was broken off. It broke about right there and it was gone. It was a fresh break. But prior to that, the spring had been broken before, and they brazed it back together, and I think it worked quite well until this end broke. And so what I did, I attempted to take the round pliers and bend that around and put it back on this peg right here and make it work. Well, the weak part is right there. When you turn this don't turn. Would have never been correct. So this one right here was laid in by postage, mail. I think it somebody delivered it out there somehow. I'm not sure. I think it was a post office. But, you know, you place the order, you get the part, you put it on, the engine runs. It's that simple. If you have an engine with a bad part, you're not going to have great success with a good running engine. You know, simple deduction. And I will tell you that this pin in this right here, in that shaft, is tapered. And about the best way to do that, I done had it out to get that spring off. But the best way to do is hold your fingers underneath under, close that vise up where it's really close but sliding fit, and knock it out. And you will immediately know which is the big end and which is the little. Get that out of there, remembering which way it goes back in there, because the hole is tapered also. So, you know the patina on this part here, I kind of like it, so I'm not going to do any metal work on it. But I tell you what, a mistake that I made. Actually, it was a learning curve. Let's say it was a lesson I learned. Not a mistake. It was a lesson I learned. Is when I took this, if you know, if we call it a side trip igniter or something, and United igniter, a side trip. And when I got this engine, it had water in the head, if you remember, carrying along with us. And So I had to overcome that, which I did. Took the head off, put this back on there, and it didn't run. So it was about this much a gap right here originally. And I had closed that up about half of that, about a half of a 16th, you know, down in the thousandths. And it didn't have enough travel. So I just now set that back to a 16th of an inch gap there when this bottoms out over here on that right there. And the way that works, that comes up there and hits that. We'll talk about that. Let's get this spring on first. Remembering the taper, big end over here. And put that on there, and that goes in that little hole right there. I mean, it's self-explanatory. They didn't send no paperwork with this. And this spring goes this pin goes this way, and if you put it immediately down where it lines up, right there with no tension on it. Let's see what the action is. It's first time, and all I did is put that back in there just like it was, low tension. That's a nice spring right there. I should be winding them springs. It's been discussed, but okay, I think that's great. And there's another little spring right down here. Well, I'll have to find a little spring to go down back. I think I had one laid aside somewhere the other day. Even to the point of that thing, but that's too strong. So, and right here's this one. Let's lay what we got out there to work with. And the one that was on this engine, it was a rig up, but I think the engine ran. You know, I'm pretty sure it did, but even to the point where that. On the igniter bolt, there's an L bracket right there, and I think it might have did have this spring here on it or something at that time, or a longer one. I'm sure it was a longer one, but it's the little spring that you have to have on the bottom here, which is a very weak tension. Which, let's try this one here, which I've had this on there before, and it was a possibility that it was the right one. I think it was the length. Okay, it's got some tension on it now. I think it was the length. When I adjusted that around there out adjustment, I think that it changed the tension on it. So let's run it through its paces here, so to speak. And all I'm doing on the back here is taking my finger and making that trip. And see, that's not right there. See that wouldn't. Okay, you have to line these up. You know, thinking out loud. You line, that's the way that goes on that engine. So that has to be whole like that, and then you have to imagine how that tripper, where it's going to leave that at. See, because if you're tripping it too much or too far, then okay, let's see what's happening. Okay, see when I do that, it should be a pull in these points around. So I'm going to have to put a half of a revolution of tension onto this spring here. That's what we've got to do. So I'm going to take this back out, and I think it's easier to put the spring in. So if I come all the way around and put that spring over yonder, and now I'll pull this spring here all the way around and poke it in that hole. Well, even then, just to shorten that, I've done shortened it twice or 3 times, so I'm going to get about 2 more. I'm going to get 2 more of those coils, at least 2. And you want to bend it the same direction as the other side is over, and then pull that out, and then cut that off right there. You know, cut it off about wherever you want it. Bending that around to where you want that. Okay, let's give that a try. Actually, it's the wrong. See, that's not good on my part right there. enough to where I need to change that, because it's completely opposite of what I need. It'll throw the angle off if you don't change it now. And we may need this also. See, that's much too big, but I think if I coil it around, I can use it on the little peg. Let's see if that'll work right there. Okay, see, if I had one of these to go by, then it'd just be simple R&R, remove and replace, but I didn't have one, so I just had to imagine what it was going to look like. And I think that's about it. I don't know, that's out of a typewriter or something. But see, that pulls that, that's all that does, is make that come over, and it's like zero pressure almost. But, and I've got that 16th up here. Yeah, that's good there for sure. Even to the point where I'm gonna set that tight before I go at it. Yeah, it is tight. And make sure that it works good and free, and it does, the amount that it should move. Now, the way that works is this thing right here comes back and holds that back until that comes up there and flips that back that way. So the spring that goes on there is wound around that way over yonder, like that. So, but that comes up even right there, so that's not enough tension to kick that back. So I think it needs to go a half around. That's what we're doing. See if I can get that around there. And that's the way you do that. Put a piece of baling wire on there, pull it up there like that right there, and get it in that hole, and then push it in with the needle nose. Works sometimes. That baling wire off there. And then get a big old clamp on that and push that. Oh, that's really good there. I didn't think I'd do that good. Okay, I think it does what it's supposed to do. See, it's open, and then when I trip it back here, coming forward, it closes, and when it trips off, it releases. So let's put that on that engine. Oh, let's set that. Let's set that pin in that shaft right there. Good to go. You know, we should test that before we take it to the engine. See, can we do that? And imagine then the way it sets on the engine is straight across this way. So somewhere like that right there, I believe, where that's at. So maybe we can see what we're doing. Points being here, and that's not hitting anything, and this being the trip right here. It's kind of sharp on the edge, and I think it trips more like that. Okay, I don't think we can blame any kind of problem on this setup. Let's hook a battery and such to it and see what we got. I just happen to have a battery right here on standby, and I showed y'all something, you know, 12-volt battery, and you know, when you get a battery off the shelf in there, and you've not used it for a little bit, you know, now's not the time to be assuming it's 12 volts in that battery, you know. Get out the little freebie and probe it. It's 2 6-volts in my case here wired together, and just put 1 to 1, and I've got 1248 on the volts, so I'll be good to go right there. And the coil this time, it's a coil I put in a can, and it served me well there on account of the ohms output right there. A lot of study went into that. But let's wire this thing up as should be. Just from the battery over to the low tension coil, and from the, let's say, battery right here up to the hot point right here. Okay, the remaining wire will go from the coil to ground, anywhere, right there. Now we should have a spark right here when we trip this mag up like this. And if we can explain that to such an extent that, see, that gap's open, so that's acting as an open switch. So what happens is when your push rod comes up, your ignition trip arm comes up, it's right here. Just imagine this right here is your trip arm, right here. Oh, okay, and it's coming forward, getting ready to fire that engine. And there should be a spark over there, because everything's wired up already on standby. So when that trip arm, just imagine, when it pushes this forward and trips off of this and lets that come open again, that amount of time that them points was closed, that's called the well. And the well is how much battery you're using up, the longer the well. And your coil, it's a building up heat in your coil. So that's pretty important, that number. It's really important on a good running engine that the battery would last all week, let's say. But let's trip that off and see, do we have a spark? So pay attention. Oh, we did, quite lively. Let's do it again. Let's see where we're at. Right here. trained man on the computer told me, showed me how to do it, to point to stuff like this right here. I've been watching Trained Man, and he lines it up with his finger there. Good job, Trained Man. Okay, now the points are open again. So I think it might be a shadow enough over here if I can trip it just right that we might get a visual on that. But this is the only second time this has been tripped for real. So let's do it. And I have to hold that vise is the problem. Y'all see that spark? Well, let's even reposition the camera and do it again. This mag has ever been tripped that some degree of success running the engine, I would think. All for a new spring and the patience to wait for the mailman to bring it. Let's get us a better tripper. She said, you gonna play with it all night, or are you gonna put it on that engine? Let's put it on that engine.